D-Mace, Finnegan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, and David Janes here with you. It is NHL trade deadline day. The NHL trade deadline is 2 p.m. Central. So right as our show goes off the air, GMs around the league will have to put their phones down. Barry Trotz is expected to join Jared Stillman on Stillman and Company at 3 o'clock after the NHL trade deadline. We will bring you any and all updates throughout the program, of course, as it relates to the Nashville Predators. But if there are any other big moves in the NHL, we will bring them to you. I do want to start with this quickly. It is absolutely a seller's market. Case in point, Anthony Beauvillier. Remember Anthony Beauvillier? Last season, the Predators traded a fifth-round pick to the Blackhawks. A fifth-round pick to the Blackhawks at the deadline for Anthony Beauvillier. Anthony Beauvillier just went from the Penguins to the Capitals for a second-round pick. It is absolutely a seller's market, so it would be in Barry Trotz's best interest to take advantage of that. But I want to start today, gentlemen, on Barry Trotz. This is an important day for Barry Trotz. There will be other important days for Barry Trotz in the coming months, but today is an important day for Barry Trotz. The NHL trade deadline is in roughly 3 hours. He's already made a ton of moves this season. Yesterday, when we were at Bridgestone Arena, I looked up the Predators' opening night lineup all the way back in October at home against the Dallas Stars. There were 7 players in the starting lineup that night that are no longer on this team.
It's the most in the league.
Gus Nyquist, Tommy Novak.
Most changes since opening night of any team in the league. We put that on our broadcast last night, as a matter of fact.
Gus Nyquist, Tommy Novak, Philip Tomasino, Dante Fabro, Alex Carrier, Luke Shen, and Scott Wedgwood. Because remember, Scott Wedgwood started in place of an injured UC Saros. So it's an important day for Barry Trotz. And this is the central question that I have for all of you, as well as for Willie and Derek. 615-737-1025. Call us, text us. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. How much faith do you have in Barry Trotz to steer the Predators back in the right direction? Because for a lot of Predators fans, that faith has been shaken this season. The major free agent signings the Predators made on July 1st that were celebrated across the league have not worked out so far. Steven Stamkos, for instance, is on pace. Well, he's averaging 0.29 goals per game this season, which would be tied for the worst of his career. Brady Shea has struggled mightily. Jonathan Marchessault has been inconsistent. We've talked a ton about UC Saros. He has had an uncharacteristically poor season right before an 8-year contract that Barry Trotz gave him starts. We spent a lot of time, a lot of oxygen talking about UC Saros. So this season has not gone well for the Predators. And as I said, the faith in Barry Trotz for a lot of Predators fans has been shaken. But he had a really interesting quote yesterday, Willie, in a story with Alex Doherty in the Tennessean. Alex Doherty caught up with Barry Trotz to recap the trade they made with the Penguins the other day, Tommy Novak and Luke Shen for Michael Bunting and a draft pick. And this was the quote from Trotz. The plan is the plan, but the plan is in pen and the path is in pencil. That stuck out to me. So today is the first day where Barry Trotz can start the process of getting this team back on track. My question for all of you, and I'll throw it to Willie and Derek as well, how much faith do you have in Barry Trotz to steer this ship back in the right direction?
Well, I mean, I've known Barry Trotz since he got hired. I was at the press conference in 1997 when he got hired by the Predators. I think it was 1997. I got a lot of faith in Barry Trotz. I think it's easy in hindsight to go back and say, wow, that one didn't work and this hasn't worked out and that guy hasn't panned out. But there's not a whole lot I question with the decision making at the time. And we discussed this a lot yesterday. I think sometimes, just things don't go right for you. We'll see how and if they can rebound next year. I think that is really what the goal is. And I think when he says what's in pen, I'm just going by what he has said week in and week out pretty consistently. They aim to bounce back and be a good team next year. The only trade that he explained what he did in trading Alex Carrier for Justin Barron. That's just the one that I think has been, if I had to rank the moves that I just think maybe I could second guess a little bit more, that would be the one right now. And maybe Barron will be a late bloomer and become a good player, and they've got him really cheap through next year, and he's going to get a chance to play. That's the beauty of being out of it. You get a chance to sort of try guys out and see if anything sticks, and people can play their way in, play their way out. But that's the one that I think has burned them. You can list a lot of things that it'd be a long list of things that have not worked out. Does that mean you lose faith in the guy at the top? I don't think so. But what has happened is he's put himself in a position where there are really important decisions to be made today and then going forward. And I think the biggest one, as you set the table, Adam, with the trade market the way it is do you make a big move for a guy like Ryan O'Reilly, who I think could get you a lot just based on what we're seeing? You saw what Brock Nelson got last night for the Islanders. They got a haul back for him. You just mentioned people are throwing around second-round picks for role players, and that's another thing to consider. But if you could get a package of guys for Ryan O'Reilly, that's when you have to pause and say, okay, my plan is in pen, but can I still have the pen if I don't have Ryan O'Reilly next year? To me, that's probably the number one thing he's got to decide today.
We do have a lot of reaction on our text line before we get to Derek. Actually, you go first, Derek, then I'll get to the reaction.
Yeah, I see it like this because you and I, Adam, talked briefly before the show while I was doing more of the talking. You asked the central question. I did more of the talking. And this is how I see it in regards to Barry Trotz. This is probably will end up being one of the most critical points in his early tenure as a GM. It wasn't last year. I think last year he did what he needed to do. And he bought himself some time because he went on every week. He was on the station telling the fan base, this is where we're at. But even with that, now that you've accumulated all this talent, you can't move this talent. It's hard to move this talent, because guys are on long-term deals. So you got to find a way to make this work as a GM. And this is why I believe this is going to be an essential season headed into next season. So it's going to be essential to off season as we head into it, because he has to figure out, one, is this the coach that is going to lead my franchise moving forward? He has to figure that out. And maybe the last portion of this season helps out. It didn't help Hines, but it may help out Coach Bruno. And then after that, he has to find out, how do I get these guys on these long-term contracts to have a better season? Who do I bring on this team to help those guys? How do we mesh as a team? You cannot go 3 years in a row without making the playoffs. You can't do it. As a young GM, as much as we love Barry around here, believe me, they will turn on him, and they will turn on him quick. You can't go 3 seasons without making the playoffs. So to me, headed into this offseason, it's going to be imperative, just like it is with the Titans. As I said, it's going to be imperative that the fan base see things that are tangible. And then when they start off the season, they better not start off the season the way they did this season.
One quick update. A player we've talked a lot about as someone maybe the Predators should look at. Dylan Cousins, the young center out of Buffalo, is reportedly being traded to Ottawa. So you can scratch Dylan Cousins off the list. That according to Elliot Friedman, who, of course, joined our show yesterday.
And Elliot said yesterday when I asked him about Cousins, is Buffalo wanted a player back and not futures for Dylan Cousins. And it does appear that Ottawa is going to trade back Josh Norris, who is a very talented center, but he has had a couple of significant shoulder surgeries, and I think and he has had a lot of trouble staying on the ice. And so I think that was that was what Buffalo decided to take back, which is very risky. Norris is a really talented player, but that is an interesting deal to me. And it's coupled by the fact that there were some rumors that Ottawa was interested in Ryan O'Reilly. Ottawa is going all in. They have to make the playoffs. They haven't made the playoffs since 2017. They feel like they've got to make it. They're not there yet. So they wanted an upgrade at center. They go with the younger guy, but apparently they talk pretty heavily about trying to make a deal for O'Reilly. I wonder where Norris's name was in that discussion.
So, Derek, you mentioned the contractual situation that the Predators find themselves in. Steven Stamkos has a no movement clause in all 4 years of his contract. Jonathan Marchessault has a modified no trade clause in all 5 years of his contract, a 15-team no trade list according to Puckpedia. Brady Shea has a modified no trade clause in all 7 years of his contract. Again, a 15-team no trade list according to Puckpedia. Philip Forsberg has a full no movement clause until 2028. Roman Josi has a full no movement clause until 2027. UC Saros, when his new contract starts, has a full no movement clause until 2031. So Barry Trotz has boxed himself in on those veteran players. Now, of course, we know he has 3 first-round draft picks this upcoming draft. He can use all 3 of them to restock the cupboard, so to speak. He could also use them to acquire a young NHL-ready player. There's a lot he can do with that. But we're getting a ton of reaction on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Let's see. Let's go through it. They're coming in fast and furious. Stephanie on our text line says, I love Trotz and have faith in his vision, but that will be shaken if he does not take a serious look at the coaching situation at this point. Mike in Lebanon, Trotz has made mistakes, but I still have faith in him to learn from it and turn it around. I admire him and his willingness to face the questions, unlike the Titans, who I have zero faith in. Alex from Nashville says he has zero faith in Barry Trotz. He has given me no reason to believe in him. Brunette hasn't either. All of these players having a down year is a coaching problem. Chip from Mount Juliet, we all love Barry, but not sure exactly what his plan is. And we talked about the Tommy Novak trade the other day. And to me, the headline of that trade isn't the fact that Tommy Novak and Luke Schenn got traded. I know that they acquired cap space and all of that. The headline to me of that trade was 1 year after Barry Trotz signed Tommy Novak, thinking, hoping, expecting that Tommy Novak could be the answer to this team's issues at second line center. Barry Trotz pulled the plug on that experiment. I commend Barry Trotz for pulling the plug on that experiment. And the contract wasn't prohibitive, right? It was 3 years with a $3.5 million cap hit. But at the same time, Barry Trotz still believed Tommy Novak could do that. It was a miscalculation on Barry Trotz's part. So I commend him for rectifying the mistake, but he still thought that Tommy Novak could do that. And I think the fact that the Predators thought Tommy Novak could do that played a part in how the season started.
I think it's I would characterize it like this, a little differently than you, Adam. I don't think they ever thought for sure he would be the second line center. I think when considering the options available, they thought he might be able to be the second line center. And they couldn't figure out a better formula. Do you think that is a misstatement? They signed him to $3.5 million. That's not second line center money. That means I'm not really sure he could be a second line center. And I think they tried to find a better solution at number 1 or number 2 center and just couldn't find it. Do you think that's inaccurate? So I think it was a calculated move to sign Novak. And I think it's fair to say they probably could have gotten more in a trade for Novak last year at the deadline than they got this year at the deadline. But that happens sometimes. Signing him to a contract at 3.5 to me is not a bad contract. It's hedging. It's basically saying, let's keep him. I can use him. Maybe he's the solution at second line center. And right now, I can't find anything that's a better option. That would be how I would say it. And what have we found out about Tommy Novak in a year? He's gone through a playoff series, and he got buried. He got dominated. So that was the first trouble sign. They allowed him to play a lot at second line center this year, and he didn't take the reins at all. He appears to even have been scarred from that playoff series some, in my estimation, and he's been concussed twice this year. So I think you've learned a little bit more about him, and I think they have assessed that he's never going to be the second line center. So let's scrap that plan and take the cap hit, take the cap dollars back, take a player that maybe you know a little bit more about in Bunting in what you're going to get, at least for a year. It's a less commitment, and you gain cap dollars, and you rid yourself of Luke Schen's contract. To me, that's the situation. But I think it's a mischaracterization to say that, oh, he's going to be our second line center. I don't think they ever thought for sure that was going to be the case. That was their hope, but they were hedging on that.
This was Trotz's quote on Tommy Novak to Alex Daugherty of the Tennessean. Quote, when Novak was a fourth-line league minimum guy and scoring while getting some sheltered minutes, that fit him just fine. When you move up the lineup, it's harder to find your space and be productive. If you want to move up the lineup and get paid more, there's more responsibility.
That's what they suspected all along, but they wanted to keep him because they were going to make the playoffs. And without him, they would be hard-pressed to replace what he was giving them last year. And at 3.5, I think you could live with it in the hopes that he could take it to the other level. But I think it's in a year they determined he could not take it to the next level.
615-737-1025. So the central question today, it is NHL trade deadline day. The NHL trade deadline is at 2 p.m. Central. Barry Trotz is expected to join Jared Stillman at 3 o'clock. This is the central question at 615-737-1025. How much faith do you have in Barry Trotz to steer the Predators back in the right direction? Call us, text us, 615-737-1025. We'll take your reaction next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game.
Let's talk Lead Company, 615-567-1000, leadcompany.com. Remember, trade deadline day coming up later, and the Predators are back in action tomorrow night in Smashville against the Chicago Blackhawks. Yes, and it'll be post-trade deadline. Max Hurst will have the coverage starting at 6 o'clock. Meanwhile, Lead Company is just a phone call away or an online appointment away if you need their services. And remember, on a Friday, sometimes you're thinking about nagging things that you haven't taken care of throughout the week, and you want to get on with your weekend. Well, if you got a maintenance problem at home or at your business, and maybe the wife's been nagging you, maybe somebody else has been getting on your case and you've got to take care of this. Maybe it's the boss. Just make an online appointment right now. Go online, leadcompany.com, or call them at 615-567-1000. Boom. You've got it laid out there. The problem will be solved, and you can get on with your weekend and enjoy all of this fun March Madness. 615-567-1000 or leadcompany.com. Lead Company, proud sponsor, Nashville Predators.
D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063. The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. It's NHL trade deadline day. A big deal in the NHL just became official between the Buffalo Sabres and Ottawa Senators. The Ottawa Senators received Dylan Cousins, a 24-year-old center, signed for several more years. We've talked about him a lot, Willie, as someone maybe the Predators could have an eye on to fix the center position. But Dylan Cousins off to Buffalo. Nick Kyprios just tweeted that he's hearing the Dallas Stars and Carolina Hurricanes have made significant strides on a trade for Mikko Rantanen.
I really believe, I don't know this to be true. I just believe that all of that scuttlebutt last night, there's no going back now. I think Rantanen will end up in Dallas. Do you agree?
Yes.
I just think there's just no way. Like Dallas has too many advantages. They've got the no state tax. They've got other Finnish stars on the team. I think it's got to be. They're going to contend. I think that will get done. Of course, that had everybody staying up past midnight last night, past 1 o'clock Eastern time when that went down.
So, Predators fans, if you thought you were rid of Mikko Rantanen in the Central Division, it lasted about six weeks.
Yeah, and think about the mano a mano possibility in the Central Division. Okay, you might have in the first round, possibly, unless John Hines in the Wild, who are battered and injured and just trying to tread water right now, if they can hold off Colorado, then you avoid this. But I think Colorado, having a now acquired Brock Nelson, will play Dallas in the first round. Think about that matchup. Somebody's going home, and both of those teams have gone all in on huge trades. Rantanen against the team he started the season with. Think about the drama in that series.
That would be great. We have a lot of reaction on our text line to the question I have posed to all of you. 615-737-1025. This is an important day for Barry Trotz. Again, Barry Trotz will join Jared at 3 o'clock today after the deadline. The deadline is 2 o'clock. How much faith do you have in Barry Trotz to steer the Predators back in the right direction? Caleb on our text line says, with the window and age of the core players, you have to be aggressive with adding some real pieces who are productive. The Predators, I looked this up yesterday. They started the season, their opening night roster. Not the players who were on the ice, but when right before the season starts, and here are the players who made the opening night roster. They were the second oldest team in the league by average. The only team older was the Edmonton Oilers. Because when you add a ton of older players in free agency, that's going to knock up your average age. And I remember, guys, this summer, I sat in this seat. I may have been sitting in your seat, Willie. I can't remember exactly which seat I was literally sitting in. But I said, this team needs to make it to at least the Western Conference Final. And I remember the two of you talked about it. And you were like, did Adam mean this coming season or within the next few years? And I know I said this season because they're an older roster. You want to take advantage of these players while they're still within their primes. So it is important for the Predators to be aggressive and try to find moves. If Barry Trotz is against a full-on rebuild, you've boxed yourself in with some of these contracts you gave out in free agency. You've got to be aggressive if you're not planning on tearing it down.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to continue along with what Barry Trotz has been public about. Is they want the bounce back for next year because of what you said. They've got an aging core that if you're not trying to win, then when are you going to try to win?
Let me interject for 1 second. According to Elliot Freeman, Mikko Rantanen and the Dallas Stars are closing in on an extension, 8 years, $12 million per season.
Right. So they can offer the 8th year and they have no state tax. We got into this a lot with Philip Forsberg when remember a couple years ago, we just went back and forth on that all summer. And I kept saying the 8th year. And that's a big advantage for Dallas.
Plus, I can't wait to see what Carolina is getting in return for this. That'll be interesting.
That will be a big question.
But I didn't mean to interrupt. Please.
No,
continue.
but look. Do you have faith? We can talk about this. That's an existential question about the Titans, the Predators, right? And everybody can call in. No, I don't have faith. Or yes, I have faith. I think on this show we should get down to the central question, and that is, how
Sure.
do you try to bounce back? Because Barry Trotz has said it. Look, I've got veterans who have won. I've also got a deep pool of prospects that you're high on. Now, both of those things have not progressed. We know it's been a disaster, right? To be where they are right now. It's blown up. But does that mean it's broken for good? Or once you start fresh next year, you'll feel better about it? Fedor Svechkov, Luke Evangelista, Zach LaRue, they've all had varying degrees of ups and downs. None of them have popped. Could next year be the year? We don't know. They've got 3 first-round picks. They've got other prospects in the pool that they think will be a part of the plan coming up. So they do not have a depleted farm system like Toronto does, like Colorado does, like Edmonton does, and we can go down the list. So that is important to keep in mind. So when he went and gambled with the aging roster, he knew he had a full farm system stocked with picks and prospects. So keep that in mind. Number 2, it's the riddle of the center. To me, it's all about the center right now, at least today, as they try to move forward. Do you want Michael McCarron back on your roster next year for $900,000? He's playing great right now. I think if you went to scout him, Colton Sissons and Ryan O'Reilly the last week and say, do we want these guys? I think all of the scouts reports back to their GMs would say, man, these 3 guys are playing at the top of their games right now. They could help our team. But they're all under contract for Barry Trotz next year. So what's the riddle? How do you answer the riddle? Are you better keeping those guys? Or are you trading centers on a team where you're still looking to upgrade that number 1 or number 2 center spot?
Well,
to me, that's a tough call.
I mean, but you can't do any of that until you figure out what you're going to do with your coach. Because again,
Well, they're not going to decide that until after the season.
No, but what I'm saying is that no matter what you do now, if you're not going to keep the coach, then a lot of this stuff may be mute. Because what if the next coach comes in and these guys don't mesh with what even though you try to get the best coach for whatever system?
I think that's another riddle.
Yeah, so it's like, which one do I know I can't do the coach first. Well, you can, because you can fire him now anytime you want to, but Barry's not going to do that. How am I going to set my team up with either this coach or the next coach? Because regardless of who you try to bring in or who you try to ship out, there are a few core guys that will be on this team no matter what. So now I got to figure out which coach best fit these guys that I have on my roster right now, the guys that are going to be here for the long haul.
Tony is in Clarksville on our phone line, driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com. Tony, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey, DVD, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Have we lost faith in Barry? It's shaky. Here's the problem. He has not done well this year. I think we can all agree on that. However, he does have the prospects. He's got all the picks. And so we can't fully determine it. However, he's on that shaky ground. That being said, like you guys had also alluded to, this is a coaching thing. And if you look back at it, when Brunette was an associate in Florida, they were good. When he was in Florida as the head coach, they were good. But they were also good when he was gone. They won a cup without him. Same thing with Jersey. When he was an associate there, they were good. I think this is a reflection on Bruno, and I think the next coach should come from Milwaukee, because that's going to be the smoothest transition for the young kids coming through.
Thanks for the call, Tony. I just want to interject this. I have a lot of respect for Carl Taylor, who is the head coach of the Milwaukee Admirals. If he hasn't been called up to the big leagues yet here, it's probably not going to happen. I know a lot of Predators fans like Carl Taylor, and I remember he came up here when, I believe it was during the COVID season, right? And the Predators coaching staff was...
Yep, he went 2-0.
The Predators coaching staff was wiped out by the coronavirus, and he showed that he can do it. I don't think that's going to happen. I think if they make a coaching change, and this is another big conversation, which we don't have to have right now, but if they make a coaching change and Barry Trotz is committed to these older players, and remember, he said to Jared a couple of weeks ago that he met with these older players, these core players after the Four Nations face-off break and said, hey, if you're in, great. If not, let me know and I'll try to move you. And Barry Trotz made it sound like none of those core players wanted out. So if he is committed to that group and that group is committed to him, they probably need a veteran coach. So that's another discussion for another day. But I'm trying to find, there was one text and I can't find it, so I'm not going to waste your time rifling through all of these texts. But there was a texter who said that they are giving Barry Trotz until August. That way we can see what happens today. We can see what happens over the summer with the NHL draft. What kind of draft pick do the Predators have? What do they do with the 3 draft picks they do have in the first round? What do they do in free agency? What do they do with the coaching situation? That texter said if things don't look better by that time, perhaps their faith will be more shaken. But I do think that is
it looked pretty good last August too. Like that's the thing. You can have a plan and it can look really good until you go out and play. So it can go a lot of different ways. I take the Winnipeg Jets. I think you can wind the clock back to a team. If I recall, Adam, help me out here. Did they not? Either they barely made the playoffs. I think they lost in the first round. They got in on the last spot 2 years ago and got whipped in the first round. And then they had all of these things facing them. Is Connor Hellebuck going to stay? He wants out. Mark Scheifele wants out. Rick Bowness, they should fire Rick Bowness. They had a lot of issues, and it looked like the future was not bright at all. Last year, they had over 100 points. Yeah, they lost in that 2 versus 3, right? That's why I always hesitate, Adam, when you're saying, well, your goal you've got to win 2 rounds. Either Colorado or Dallas is probably going to be out in the first round this year. When you get that 2 versus 3, you got heavyweights. That first round is brutal. But my point is, look where Winnipeg is now with essentially the same guys, right? They've had huge bounce backs from Scheifele and Nikolai Ehlers and guys who have been there for a long, long time. That 2 years ago, you looked at the future and you said, ooh, the Jets might be fading out. They got to blow it up. They got to make some moves. They basically stuck to their guns. So you can bounce back when you have a bad year. Is my point. Now this is a really bad year for the Predators. So this is a bigger bounce.
Elliot Friedman reporting before we go to break. I hope Luke Schenn did not get too fond of Pittsburgh because according to Elliot Friedman, Luke Schenn is being traded from Pittsburgh to Winnipeg. So yeah. I'm interested to see
and I'm guessing they retained some salary,
which the Predators could not do because they retained salary on Gus Nyquist. So Luke Schenn was in Pittsburgh for 2 days. He may not even have left Nashville. They might have said, hey, hang tight. We'll let you know. Luke Schenn, according to Elliot Friedman, being traded from the Penguins to the Jets. Curious to see what that return is. 615-737.
It's going to be more than you think.
Yes.
Luke Schenn, who was the guy.
We have the return.
Okay.
According to Darren Drager of TSN, a 2nd-round pick and a 4th-round pick.
2nd and a 4th.
A 2nd and a 4th for Luke Schenn.
So that's pretty nice maneuvering of the retention spot. For those that don't follow closely, gets you way, way more in the return. That is what, and that's why the Predators got the 2nd for Nyquist. And now as we move forward here, I'm wondering if they could have held out a little bit more because that retention spot is gold right now.
615-737-1025 will continue your reaction on NHL trade deadline day. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, the game.
They can't handle it.
Happy Friday, everyone. This is Derek Mason, and you heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff over at Cool Springs MD for some time. If you set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time setting a resolution or some type of goal to shed some extra pounds only to face disappointment. But I got a bunch of solutions here for you because at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands the frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss. Their comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you and you only. So connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
D Mace, Vingan, and Donick 1025, 1063 the game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. The reported return, again, right before break, it was reported that the Penguins, who just acquired Luke Schenn from the Predators, he's off to Winnipeg. According to Elliot Freeman, the return, a second-round pick and a fourth-round pick. What we don't know yet is if salary is being retained on this deal. I have not seen that yet. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen. But Luke Shen from the Penguins to the Jets for a second-round pick and a fourth-round pick. How would we feel if that's the return on Luke Shen with no salary retained?
With no salary retained, it's not a good look on the Predators. I would bet that there's some salary retained there. Pittsburgh, their camp was immediately speculating that they would take Shen's contract, use the retention spot that Nashville did not have, and get more for him. So that's a pretty good piece of business there by Pittsburgh. The retention spot is big. In fact, I think you, in retrospect, could say that based on what everybody else is getting, that Barry Trotz, in hindsight, probably could have held out for more on his one retention spot that he got. He got a second for Nyquist, but based on what everybody else is getting for complimentary forwards, did he have to use the retention spot to get the second? I think in hindsight, he's got to be saying, maybe I think I could have gotten more there.
Jose is on our phone line, driven by Wilson County, Hyundai.com. Jose, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, guys. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens today. And I do have one thing to ask, and that is in regards to somebody like Dylan Cousins. Could the Preds make a push for him?
Well, to interrupt you, Jose, Dylan Cousins has already been traded today. He's been traded from Buffalo to Ottawa. So Dylan Cousins is off the board. I'm sorry to tell you that.
Man.
Oh, no worries.
Thanks for the call. Thanks for the call, Jose.
The riddle of the center.
Oh, man. All right. One texter says, if there's no salary retained on the Luke Shen deal, then I have zero faith in Barry, and he needs to be gone. He isn't cut out for this job. One texter says Trotz has single-handedly destroyed the franchise. All right, pump the brakes there.
Wow.
I'm not sure I feel that same way. Chip from Mount Juliet says, exactly, Trotz pulled the trigger too early on Shen. We'll see. Again, we don't know yet if salary is being retained or not, but I haven't seen it yet.
I think we're all surprised at the market right now for the sellers. I knew it would be a seller market, but it is shocking how much the sellers are getting. Would you agree, Adam?
Yes.
So I think maybe that was the misread of jumping in early with Nyquist. I know you said you were shocked it was a second. I wasn't shocked with the retention, but now based on the market, we're seeing even more deals that are similar and even more lucrative for the sellers right now. And so that's interesting. But I find it ironic. Luke Shen, let's be honest, how many of the fans always kind of said, why did they get Luke Shen? What are they doing with Luke Shen? Luke Shen always has had value that I have tried to point out, that some people, he absolutely got crushed on a lot of the Preds Twitter stuff. Agreed?
Yes.
And like, I'd take anything for Luke Shen. How are you going to get rid of that contract? Without, you see, he's a pretty sought after guy in the right role.
David Pagnota of the Fourth Period is reporting that the Toronto Maple Leafs are getting Scott Laughton.
That's the center. That's another center that's been out there.
So we'll see what the return on that is, and we can compare that to what the Predators could get for Ryan O'Reilly.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
There were a few reports yesterday linking the New Jersey Devils to Ryan O'Reilly. The New Jersey Devils lost Jack Hughes. I want to say it was a shoulder injury. He is done for the season. That is a gigantic blow for the New Jersey Devils. But then the following reports were they're still buying. Just because Jack Hughes is out doesn't mean they're changing their plan. They have an obvious need at center. So I saw Ryan O'Reilly linked to New Jersey quite a bit yesterday. So again, we'll see.
Yeah. Now, New Jersey, as we talked about a lot last year in terms of UC Saros, and the Devils were looking for a goalie at the time. They have a lot of assets to trade. So I do think if you were to look at potential trade partners, that would be one where they could give you a package. Again, the decision is the riddle. As soon as you trade Ryan O'Reilly, you're going to be looking for another Ryan O'Reilly, which I don't think you're going to get in return. Not that you won't get a lot of assets. You might get a better defense partner in the future for Roman Josi or Brady Shea, for example. They've got a lot of good defense prospects. They're deep there. They've got a lot of pretty talented wingers. I don't know that there's a young center that would be the heir apparent to Ryan O'Reilly that Barry Trotz might have his eye on? If there is, I don't think I've seen it. But that is, I think, a really tough decision for Barry Trotz and his group is trading Ryan O'Reilly. That might alter your plan in Penn of being a bounce back team next year.
To me, that is the move. That if the Predators make that move, that is Barry Trotz saying we're taking a big step.
We got to take a step back to take 2 steps forward.
Right. If they trade Ryan O'Reilly before 2:00, that to me is an acknowledgement that they are taking a step back and they are going to have to change that path in pencil.
Perhaps. Now that they would free up some cap space. There's free agency this year, but it's just hard to find guys like Ryan O'Reilly who do everything that he does. It's not goals, assists, points. It's faceoffs. It's penalty kill. It's power play. It's intangibles. Checking the other team's top players. There are very few guys that can do that you can replace Ryan O'Reilly with.
Derek brought up an interesting question when it comes to Andrew Brunette. So Barry Trotz has said multiple times to Jared, and again, Barry Trotz will join Jared at 3:00 today, that he is going to see this thing through with Andrew Brunette. So even if he doesn't make a decision on Andrew Brunette, as he's thinking about what he's doing today, doesn't he have to keep that in the back of his mind, though? If he's looking to acquire certain players, if it's going to be Andrew Brunette again next season, if it's not going to be Andrew Brunette next season, finding players that either fit with Andrew Brunette or if it's not going to be Andrew Brunette, fit with another coach. I mean, how much do you have to keep that in the back of your mind when you're Barry Trotz today as you're making moves?
I think you have to, because again, the guys that they have under contract, they can't go anywhere. Well, let's just say they're not going anywhere, at least for the next for the foreseeable future. So whatever decision that you're trying to make for the team, I think first and foremost, it's the head coach. Are we going to move forward with the head coach and, truly define what we're doing out there on ice, or are we going to go in another direction? And if you're going to go in another direction, you got to make sure. You got to make sure, because all of this stuff is going to start happening pretty fast. The offseason and everything. The minute you get into the offseason, you're out of it very quickly. So whatever decision, it's going to have to be well thought out as we speak now. And when they enter that last season like they did last year, there has to be a plan on how we are moving forward, either with the coach or without the coach, because essentially that may dictate the players that we may go get. Because Andrew Brunette may want this player. You go out and get that player. And then all of a sudden you switch a coach, and then you bring another coach in, and that player that you got doesn't fit what he wants to do. So I think the head coaching situation needs to be the first thing that they figure out as they head into the off season.
I think it's fair. Yeah, as they head into the off season, I agree. And Adam's point is, I think for today too, by 2:00, you have to decide if I'm acquiring a player, how does that fit in my vision for how he fits, how the team wants to play? Do they want to dive back into let's make the team quicker, younger, faster to play Brunette's system, or with the players that they know are going to be back or somebody they acquired today, does he envision playing a little differently than they started off this year? But here is, to me, I continue to throw this central question at her. Here's another trade that just went down. Brandon Tanev, who sat out last night because they were going to trade him for the Kraken. He is a gritty
energy player,
a winger, not a center. Got a second-round pick for him to go back to the Jets, where he has been a good player there before. So a gritty bottom six guy who is not a center got a second-round pick. So let me ask you this question, Adam. And I don't know, have we seen the return for Lawton yet?
We have not, but it is being reported by multiple people that Scott Lawton is being traded to the Maple Leafs.
Could you get a first-round pick for Colton Sissons?
It's a
based on how wingers are going for second-round picks.
Mm-hmm.
Could you get a first for Sissons?
That's a good question.
I don't think it's out of the question.
We will keep an eye on
maybe
that.
even Michael McCarron. Just centers are hard to find, as we know, and it's a seller's market. To me, this is the real-time question now. We can figure out the existential stuff and the coaching stuff and the summer stuff a lot later. But they have massive decisions to make today.
615-737-1025. We will continue to bring you updates about the Predators and the NHL trade deadline. 2 p.m. Central, the NHL trade deadline. We will continue to bring you updates. We will switch gears here to the Titans coming up next. Chad Brinker, in an interview with the Tennessean, has his eyes on a certain team in terms of how he hopes to go about free agency this year. And by the way, NFL free agency starts next week, if I'm not mistaken. We'll get into that next. 615-737-1025. Tune in later today to 1021 The Ville for Vanderbilt baseball as the Commodores host Xavier. Pregame begins at 4:15 and first pitch is at 4:30. Coverage also available, on the 1021 The Ville app and at 1021theville.com. D. Mace, Finnegan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you on NHL Trade Deadline Day. The Luke Schenn trade to Winnipeg is official for a second-round pick and a fourth-round pick. At least according to the Jets official release, there is nothing on salary retention. I will see what it says on the Penguins release. But considering what the Predators got as part of a Luke Schenn deal a couple of days ago, if the Penguins were able to get a second-round pick and a fourth-round pick for no salary retention, not a great look for Barry on that one.
I think you'd have to say that. I mean, just that's. I think what we have found in the last few days is how important the salary retention slots are. I never gave it too much thought, but I think as we look, and another one came down, Scott Lawton, right, a center that because he plays in the East. I think unless you're a pretty hardcore hockey fan, you may not have even heard of this guy. Right? He's a solid third line guy. Because Philadelphia could retain some salary, they got a first round pick for him from the Maple Leafs.
We will switch gears. We will keep you updated on any and all things that happen at the NHL trade deadline. Again, the trade deadline is 2:00. But the Tennessee Titans have some big decisions to make as well. NFL free agency is, I believe, Wednesday.
Oh, we got a frenzy today for the hockey. Next Wednesday is going to be a frenzy for the football.
Yes. So NFL free agency starts next week. And Nick Suss of the Tennessean sat down with Chad Brinker, the supreme ruler of football, as I call him.
That's pretty cool for Nick that he got a meeting with the supreme ruler of football.
Yeah, that's
Nick
cool.
Must have pull.
That's quite impressive. I believe the sit down occurred at the NFL Combine. But the headline of the story is why the Tennessee Titans front office has studied 3 recent NFL turnarounds for inspiration. And when it comes to free agency, there is one team that Chad Brinker, again, the supreme ruler of football, there is one franchise in the NFL he seems to have his eyes on, the Washington Commanders. This was a quote from Chad Brinker to Nick Suss of the Tennessean. Quote, of course they got the quarterback, Jaden Daniels, that really transformed the organization. But they went after volume and quantity. And I don't know that they spent more than $10 million per year on one particular player. It's just interesting when you start studying the strategies of these teams that have kind of climbed out of a situation like ours. So remember, last season in free agency for the Titans, they spent big money on Calvin Ridley, 4 years, $92 million. Lloyd Cushenberry, 4 years, $50 million. Chidobe Awuzie, 3 years, $25.5 million. Tony Pollard, 3 years, $24 million. Here's what I saw in this story from Nick Suss. Quote, a year ago, the Tennessee Titans gave $168.4 million worth of contracts to wide receiver Calvin Ridley and L'Jarius Sneed. The Washington Commanders, meanwhile, used $177.4 million to sign 26 players. 19 inked one-year deals. No one signed longer for 3 seasons. Those 26 players combined to start 167 games for the Commanders. Per Pro Football Reference's approximate value metric, Washington's 26 free agent signings were worth a little bit more than the Titans' 16 best players, free agents or otherwise, combined. So the Washington Commanders went with a volume method in free agency. Some of the notable players they signed in free agency. They signed Bobby Wagner, linebacker, 1 year, worth up to $8.5 million. Safety Jeremy Chin, 1 year, $5.2 million. Linebacker Frankie Louvu, 3 years, worth up to $36 million. Zach Ertz, 1 year, worth up to $5 million. They gave Dante Fowler a 1-year deal. Defensively, Bobby Wagner, Jeremy Chin, and Frankie Louvu were 1, 2, and 3 on the Commanders in tackles last season. Dante Fowler had 10.5 sacks. Zach Ertz had 654 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns. So I think it's interesting, the approach that the Commanders took to free agency, and it appears that the Titans may take a page out of the Commanders' playbook when free agency starts next week.
It's interesting because I was looking at another article that Suss wrote about, free agents. One free agent the Titans should target at every position, and Dante Fowler just happened to be on that list as far as edge rushers, outside backers. And then notably Samaje Perine, obviously because he's from the Kansas City Chiefs, and that's where Boganzi comes from. So that's another guy that Suss sort of put in at the running back spot. Listen, whether they do it by volume or they try to do it the way they did last year, they got to get it right. See, everything sort of worked out in Washington's favor. Why? Because they had the quarterback. You talked about the 3 guys that led the team in tackles. They were 1, 2, and 3, and all of them were free agents. But there were some on there that didn't hit as well, I'm sure. But a lot of that is overshadowed, whether it be good play or bad play by those individuals, by what the quarterback does. And Washington and Jaden Daniels were able to, stake their claim as one of the young, top talented teams in the National Football League. So by volume, if you do it that way, then if you got a quarterback, maybe it hit, maybe it doesn't. But I think with the Titans, I'm not sure so much of a volume like Washington. I just think they got to find guys that are going to contribute right away. That's that's whether you go out and get 4 free agents or 14 free agents. You have to have some hits right away, because the fan base they don't know anything else but draft picks that have come in here and hadn't, or free agents that have come in here and didn't earn the paycheck that you gave them or you were giving them.
So I'm wondering which players out there, and look, we will get more in depth about this next week, about the types of players that the Titans can find that can replicate what the Commanders did last season. A couple of the other teams mentioned in this article by Nick Suss of the Tennessean, the Bills and Lions. Nick Suss writes, there's a difference between having beliefs and ignoring what's right in front of your face. Brinker told the Tennessean that he spent a chunk of this offseason not only studying the Commanders' turnaround, but also the turnarounds in Buffalo and Detroit. That means looking into the controversial at the time measures taken by Buffalo GM Brandon Beane, who traded away big name players like Sammy Watkins, Ronald Darby, and Marcel Darius to build up draft capital. And it means considering the blockbuster move Detroit GM Brad Holmes made in his first month on the job, trading away superstar Matthew Stafford for a huge haul. The Titans don't have a Stafford-type asset to dangle in front of contenders, and they don't have the nearly $100 million in salary cap space the Commanders did when they rebuilt their roster last spring. What they do have is an awareness that giving small contracts to veteran players at non-premium positions is an effective way to plug holes, and they didn't have to study the Commanders to know that.
I agree with that philosophy for sure. And you hope that you hit. You need some hits. Yeah. I think no matter what you do, you need some hits. You need good return on investment, which brings to mind, where do we think things are? I would love to see some reporting on this. It's not a big story around the league, so it's I think it's much more up to the local guys to figure out what's going on. Where are we in the Harold Landry situation here?
I have not seen.
Does he have trade value? Will they be able to get a trade? Because what usually happens is you seek a trade, and then a lot of times the guy gets cut. Matthew Stafford, they let him kind of look at the market. He looked at it. He agreed to stay with the Rams. Christian Kirk, they put him out there. It looked like he was going to get cut, and they were able to trade him, but for a 7th round pick. So with Harold Landry's price tag, I don't think they're going to get a whole lot in return. But are they going to keep Harold Landry, or are they just going to cut him?
Cutting Harold Landry without
That's a big decision,
yeah,
don't you think?
without having and listen, I'm not saying that they don't have a plan, but when you allow a guy to free agent, if you allow a guy to go and test the market or go try to find a trade, then that's basically the first step to saying, hey, listen, I don't think this relationship is going to last really any further than what it has. So, you may want to go out and look for another suitor if possible. In that way, you can kind of pick where you want the destination you want to go to, and that will have the Titans better understand if there is a trade market for Harold Landry. I would tend to think there is a trade market for him. But if you're talking about more than a 4th round pick, I don't think you're going to get it. In the 4th round, I think is stretching it because he's getting older. Because, I know it's 2 years removed from the injury, but the injury is still there. And he did come back to play really good football. But, that's one of those things. If, you allow him to walk, then you got to find somebody to replace him, somebody that's going to step in there and give you the production. Because again, Titans need hits. That's what they need. And if you don't get a hit, a guy that we can see is making the team better, then it's not going to be a win for the organization.
I'm looking for this story. It was written on ESPN. It was the perfect trade locations for players who are going to be available. Harold Landry was one of them. And the suggestion was to the Baltimore Ravens for a 4th round pick. I'm trying to find the story, but I do remember that they suggested Harold Landry to the Ravens for a 4th round
I think
pick.
From a personnel standpoint, you tell me if you agree, D-Mace, that makes perfect sense. The question is, can they take his salary? Or does there need to be a reworking
I think they would
of the contract?
I think Baltimore would Baltimore would get a deal done contingent on reworking the contract of Harold Landry. I'm sure, because listen, I gotta believe it, because history doesn't refute what I'm saying. Harold Landry goes to Baltimore, he's gonna have a damn good season.
I found the story, by the way.
Yeah,
I think there's going to be a resurgence. And for defensive guys, when they step in that building, it just seems like they get better for whatever reason. At least the guys I know.
Surrounded by good players. It's
in
a
good
system.
organization, good system. Yeah. So if I'm Harold Landry, I'm trying my best to get to Baltimore.
So according to this story, what would it cost to land Harold Landry? I apologize. I'm not going to scroll all the way back up to see who wrote this story. Quote, the Titans are probably hoping there's little interest in Landry at his current contract figure and that they can keep him with a pay reduction. This was from last week, so I think this has changed. That's actually written by Ben Solak, who we've referenced on this show many times. Landry, who might be looking to join a contending team while he still has a few years of good play, might be willing to restructure with an acquiring team, which will increase the trade value that the team is willing to send for his contract. It's hard to see from the outside looking in. The Falcons sent a 3rd round pick to the Patriots for Matthew Judon last year. Judon was 32, only hitting the cap for $6.5 million, and had recently delivered 12.5 and 15.5 sack seasons. Also, last August, the Seahawks traded 27-year-old Darrell Taylor to the Bears for a 6th round pick. Taylor wasn't a scheme fit in Seattle and had only 1 year of $3.1 million left on his rookie deal. I'd imagine Landry will come in somewhere between those two compensations as long as he plays on a restructured contract for the acquiring team.
And that's what it's going to have to be. That's the only way I think a trade can be facilitated, is if he reworks the contract. Now, I think he's more inclined to rework it with someone else than the Tennessee Titans. Because again, if his goal is to go to a contender like right now, then listen, the only way that I'm not staying here for a reworked contract. I'm just not, because what you're going to do is you're going to go from paying me. How much was he making, Willie? How much did he constantly get scammed? Like 20, like close to 20 million?
Landry?
Yeah.
Over 20 million.
Yeah.
His cap hit.
Exactly. So he would have to, when I say take a pay cut, he would have to take a massive pay cut. Like it ain't a couple of $1 million.
Remember, it's the cap hit
Yeah.
is one thing, and then what he is owed is
But
is
what I'm
another
saying
part of
is
it.
he's
Yeah.
going to have to take a massive pay cut, like damn near half of what he was scheduled to make.
2 years remain on Landry's deal. The acquiring team would be on the hook for $17.5 million in 2025 and another $17.5 million in 2026. But all of that money is non-guaranteed.
He would have to pay for it $8 or $9 million. That's what the Titans
So
want
half.
him to pay. Basically half. And I don't think he's going to do that on a team that's not ready to win. If the Titans were ready to win, I think Harold Landry would do it all day. But because they're not ready to win, he would rather take that somewhere else, a team that's ready to win now.
The reason why Ben Solak picks the Ravens. Landry would make a great Raven. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Baltimore wants to have a rotation at that position. The Ravens gave at least 500, but no more than 700 snaps to 3 players on the edge last season. 2 of those 3 players, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Odafe Owe and Kyle Van Noy, are signed only through 2025. Landry has enough coverage ability to work in the system and can provide an immediate pass rush impact at a position the Ravens have consistently missed on draft picks and need quick help.
Because Harold Landry is a consistent player. Harold Landry is a good player. Solid. Well, he's more than solid. He's a good player. And he is a 10-sack guy. He's a double-digit sack guy, 9.5, 10-sack guy. You put him in that system, he will end up doing what Van Noy did over the last couple of seasons. Van Noy seemed to be like his season, his career was sort of on the downcline. And then he has a resurgence with the Baltimore Ravens. I think the last 2 seasons.
10+ sacks.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So to me, that's Harold Landry all over again. Van Noy was a consistent player in New England. I think that's where he was, in New England. And then came to Baltimore, and it just seemed like his career he got that extra energy. That would be Harold Landry going from here to there, or any other, I believe, scheme that's going to be a more rotating scheme and a team that's ready to win now.
We have some quick NHL trade deadline updates. First, I want to confirm that there was no salary retained on the Luke Schenn trade. So Luke Schenn was traded from Pittsburgh to Winnipeg for a 2nd and 4th round draft pick, no salary retention.
Does not reflect well on the net result for what Barry Trotz got for Luke Schenn.
One texter said, remember the texter I said I'm going to give him until August? That texter texted back in, I withdraw my previous statement about waiting until August to pass judgment on Trotz. He's in over his head. Remember, Barry Trotz on with Jared Stillman at 3 o'clock, and I imagine Jared will be asking Barry Trotz about this. Another update as it relates to Mikko Rantanen. According to Jeff Marek, sounds like the basis of the return for Mikko Rantanen when they get the deal done will be Logan Stankoven and 2 first-round draft picks. Logan Stankoven, a really good young player for the Dallas Stars. He might not even be 21 at this point.
But is he a franchise guy? I don't know.
I wonder if they're getting first-round picks back, maybe they flip one for someone who can help them now. How about Brock Besser?
It's been speculated that they might take those picks and then go try to get something else. Carolina is in an interesting position now because they have a very good team that's got a chance to win. Like that's a futures kind of move there. That the net drop off from Rantanen to that package is a big one, unless they can take that and improve their team right now.
Barry Trotz addressed, again, we referenced some quotes from this story, but Barry Trotz talked with Alex Doherty of the Tennessean about the Novak Schenn trade now that we've seen that Schenn is on the move again. This is what Barry Trotz told Alex Doherty, quote, I had multiple teams call me on Schenn. I had a certain value for him. On a standalone trade, I might have been able to get a little more. But with the value between Bunting and Novak going back and forth, me and Kyle Dubas, the GM of the Penguins, felt that if we made a little bigger deal, we could make it work.
I think it's clear that Barry Trotz, I think what his argument's going to be is he likes Michael Bunting more than most. I think he values Michael Bunting more than what people have graded that trade around, and only time will tell if that turns into something. But just on paper, when you say, okay, you got it was part of a bigger deal, but if you sort of shave it off, people are kind of looking at it in 2 pieces, right? Novak for Bunting, Schenn for a 4th. So from Pittsburgh's angle, Pittsburgh did a really nice job of maneuvering the assets. They got younger and they got a couple of picks.
So, according to Frank Saravalli of Daily Faceoff, Carolina and Dallas closing in on a deal. The details: the Stars will receive Mikko Rantanen with an 8-year extension in place. The Hurricanes will receive Logan Stankoven, 2 first-round picks plus smaller pieces. So we'll keep an eye on the NHL trade deadline, 615-737-1025. But it's time. It's 12:30, or soon to be 12:30 on Friday, which means it's time for Ask D-Mace. 615-737-1025. If you have questions for Derek, mostly nothing is off limits. Again, I screen the texts. David screens the calls. So keep it PG as best you can.
Please.
But Derek, he's game. He'll answer anything and everything. Again,
Let's
mostly.
do it.
615-737-1025. So get those calls and texts in now. This week's Nashville's Best Deal is from Brewster's Real Ice Cream in Hendersonville. See why Brewster's is a scoop above the rest with the best ice cream shakes, sundae splits, blasts, and more. Visit thegamenashville.com/deals now and get half off a $50 gift card while supplies last.
He played 15 years in the NFL.
Quick throw. Touchdown, Derek Mason.
He had over 12,000 receiving yards.
Midfield, and there he goes. 80 yards for the touchdown.
And now you can ask him anything. Have a question about football or life? Now's your time to ask D-Mace.
We'll welcome you in.
Now, D-Mace. On 102.5 and 106.3, The Game and the Game Nashville app.
It's time to ask D-Mace on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick, of course, Derek Mason, and Adam Vingan here with you. Get your calls, get your texts, 615-737-1025. Let's start with Craig on our text line because it is NHL trade deadline day. So let's start with this question from Craig. Derek, during a trade deadline, if your name is rumored, how stressful is that away from the game on your family with the possibility of having to change cities and kids changing schools and stuff like that?
It's very stressful. You know, I was part of a potential trade. I ended up getting traded once, but I was part of a potential trade rumor my third year, I think, in the NFL. And, you know, just the uncertainty on everybody's part. And I'm talking about me and my family at the time of, you know, it's not business as usual. You can't go about your day business as usual because you don't know at any minute you'll get that call. Now, later on in my career, when I was already established toward the end of my career, actually the last year, to me, it really didn't matter because I went into the season with high hopes and felt just like rejuvenated and ready to go. And ended up being on a team that, you know, it just sucked everything out of you. Basically, not to say that the guys were bad guys, but just it wasn't, you know, conducive for winning, so to speak, in with the Jets. So when I got traded from the Jets to Houston, I was almost relieved, and I was ready to go. You know, because at the time my family was back here in Nashville. So I just, you know, packed my bags, and a really good friend of mine who also did a lot of work for me, Deb, I went to Houston. She had everybody pack up the apartment, and my stuff was shipped off to Houston and was there 2 or 3 days later. So that was different because, you know, I was ready to go. But when you're young in your career and you sort of hadn't gotten to that second contract, man, when you're young, just starting a family, that stuff, it can be a lot stressful on you.
Joey from Bellevue says, hey, D-Mace, did you get lost navigating through the red light district while in Amsterdam last year?
You know what?
When I went, it was like a maze.
I did not go. And full
I thought we were really going to have a story.
Full disclosure here. I loved Amsterdam with my family. Full disclosure.
That was your summer vacation last year?
Yeah.
Okay.
My son and my daughter, more so my daughter, they wanted to go, but during the daytime, not at night. They wanted to go during the day because they wanted to see it. Like, see what it's about, just see the actual street. And we never got a chance to go. So I wasn't going to go down there and take my kids down there at night, even though they are adults. But they wanted to go during the day to kind of walk down that street and see what it was about. So, no, I didn't get a chance to get over to the red light district, neither at night nor during the daytime.
It's how I feel about when I go to New Orleans, and I try to go to New Orleans regularly. I always try to just pass through Bourbon Street.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to take a walk down the street. Maybe I'll pop into a bar quickly, but I just like, all right, I'm going to go. I'm going to say that I was there, get the experience, and then go somewhere else. So I've never been to Amsterdam. So this may be an apples to oranges thing here, but I imagine the red light district is like that for people too, for certain people as well.
Yeah, it is. It's sort of, from what I understand, again, because I haven't been there, from what I understand, it's for adults. That's what it is.
Yes.
And then another reason why I just love Amsterdam, because they are a big proponent of 420. What is it, 420?
Yes.
Yeah, 420. They're a big proponent of 420. So I love Amsterdam.
I don't know if I can say this on the air. Okay, I'm not going to.
I'm saying I love Amsterdam because of that's another reason why.
Do you remember
enjoy it.
the end of the song the next episode?
Yes.
Smoke something every day.
You can do that in Amsterdam if you want to.
Hey, smoke blank every day. That's what it's like in Amsterdam. Jerry is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Jerry, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Dean Mace,
Yes.
if you were a game show host, what would the game show be, and what would your entrance music be?
Oh, my game show would be What Would Your Mama Say?
Thank you for the call, Jerry.
Thank you for the call, Jerry. That would be the name of my show. So when you like different situations, you're doing something stupid, because we all do it, even as adults. Sometimes somebody, what would your mama say? That should be the name of the show. Just go around with individuals for the day, record them, and then bring them back to the studio and sort of tape the show in such a way that they show what you were doing, and then they say, what would your mama say? And then they have your mama coming on. That would be hilarious.
There was a skit on Saturday Night Live a couple of years ago, and Saturday Night Live likes to do these sort of game show things. And the name of the game show was Why'd You Like It? And Kenan Thompson was the host, and the contestants were shown Instagram photos they liked, and they would say, why'd you like that?
Why did you like the post?
Be like a thirst trap. It's like,
that get people in trouble, right?
why'd you
there.
like that? What would your mama say?
What would your mama say?
I love it.
Who would be your sidekick?
Oh man, God,
Chris Sanders.
Yeah.
Chris Sanders would make an excellent game show.
No,
show sidekick.
See, my homeboy Gerard. He lives here. My homeboy Gerard would be there. He'll be an excellent sidekick because he's a people's person. He just like talking to people and everything else. So when you have someone that is a people's person that love conversation, they're great sidekicks because they do all the other stuff.
I feel like we need to get this guy on the show.
Exactly.
It sounds like we need to get him on.
Yeah,
And the other person I think
he's called in before.
Oh, he has?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other person I think that needs to be part of this panel, part of the mix. There's different ways to get people involved in a game show, but I feel like your friend, your teammate that you went in on the bullet, 50-50, your first car.
My best friend, but he lives in Michigan. But yeah,
well, we got to bring him down.
Okay.
This is a big operation. We'll make him an offer he can't refuse.
More the merrier. The right people, though.
For people that missed the bullet story,
yes.
This is a classic. Like we all remember our first car, right? So teammates, limited funds, just like I had to sell my baseball cards to get my first car. But so tell them about the bullet.
Okay, quickly, the bullet. My friend Sean and I, who's like a brother to me, did spoke at my mom and dad's funeral. Just a stand-up individual, love the guy. So he and I had $250 together. We put it together, $500.
$250
back in this was 94 or 95? Might have been 95. So we put our $250 in. We go to this nice older lady's house, and we come up on what was then just a blue Ford Escort hatchback. So Sean and I, we buy it. The kicker is Sean didn't know how to drive a stick shift. I did. So I had to drive us around for like 2 or 3 months, like back for. So I had to get up early when I didn't have class to take him because he had class. But he kind of figured it out after a while. So fast forward, the bullet, everybody loves the bullet, see it riding down campus.
You got wheels, you can get
around.
around.
Wheels, everything. It got so bad where one of our buddies, he played fullback. He broke the seat on the bullet in the driver's side. So whenever we would drive, you'd only see the top of our heads because it was leaned back so far. That was the only reason. But we got us a new car. Well, not new car, but new car. Our senior year.
Upgrade.
It was a
Slight
slight upgrade. But the front passenger tire was bigger than the actual car rim. So when we would turn right, you would hear. So we really couldn't make a right. We tried to make all lefts. So
that's a problem.
Yeah,
we end up going in circles if my calculations are correct. If that happens.
So we got to drive in this car a lot. because it was plush. It fit a lot more people. So we got to drive in that car. So one day, Sean goes out and it's snowing. Sean goes out, the caddy don't start. So Sean like, hey, we got 2 cars. That's a luxury. 2 cars in college. I ain't telling you how much the cars combined cost about $800, but still. So Sean comes back up and say, hey, D, where's the Bullet? And I'm like, what do you mean? It's down. We had it parked right in the front. It's downstairs in the front. He was like, no, it's not. So I threw on my clothes, jumped out. We searched that whole parking lot. It was a big parking lot. Somebody stole the Bullet. Somebody stole the Bullet.
That is a shame.
Somebody stole the Bullet.
It's a sad ending to a great story.
Yeah, it really was.
So,
but we
still
neglected
don't know
the
where
Bullet.
the Bullet is right
we
now.
neglected the Bullet. We did. We left it. We didn't even start the Bullet up. We never started the Bullet up.
Somebody got it started.
Yeah,
Somebody found a way to get it started.
Exactly. Somebody
Hello,
got it started.
D-Mace.
Yeah.
Where
This is
is
the
the
suit
Bullet
speaking.
today?
Hey, Sue.
Do you have a report on the Bullet, Chase?
No, I want to know. Do you know the VIN number? Because we got to track this thing down.
Let's find
Did
it.
it even have a VIN number? Did they do
Anybody.
VIN numbers for the
I'm
Bullet?
sure they did have the VIN number, but we didn't know what the VIN
Yeah.
number was.
Your co-host needs to be Yancey Thigpen.
Why? No, that wouldn't be my code. No.
His clothes would probably be nicer than yours,
Oh, much.
but
much
you were a better
more.
football
Yes.
player.
Yes. And you had a fur coat. Yeah, I didn't tell y'all that story. Our audience, well, we have so many new audience.
Why don't you hold that thought?
Because I got another story.
All right.
I'm sorry.
We'll
people.
tell that story. Get your questions in for Derek Mason, 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, the game. D-Mace, Finnegan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. It's still Ask D-Mace, but we have a developing situation in the SEC women's basketball tournament. Vanderbilt was down 25 to South Carolina. They've cut the lead to 5 with 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter in the quarterfinals of the SEC tournament. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. But Vanderbilt, a furious rally to make it a 5-point game. They trailed by as many as 25 to the Gamecocks, now down 68-63 with 4 minutes left.
It's been kind of fun to watch them come back. I thought they were just getting buried. In the first half, they could not get a good shot at all.
Or the shots they had, they just wasn't falling.
They were down, quick math here, 48-23 at halftime. Oof. And now they are down 68-63. So making it interesting. 4 minutes left in the SEC tournament quarterfinal. Derek, before we went to break, there was a story that you were going to tell.
Yeah, quickly. Chase brought up the Yancey Thigpen and him being the co-host for a reason. Back in 1998, 98, they went out and they acquired Yancey Thigpen via free agency. He was the biggest free agent wide receiver, I think, at that time. And, back then, my number was, people think my number had always been 85 because they just remember me as 85. But no, it started off as 82. And interesting. Here's the interesting story is this. What makes it so interesting? I'm at home and I'm just laying in the bed. This is early in the morning. I'm laying in the bed. And this is about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. And I turn on TV and ESPN is coming on. And all of a sudden, I just see Yancey Thigpen sitting there. I wasn't surprised about necessarily that. But he owes up an 82 jersey. And I'm like, what? Isn't that my number? So I'm thinking man, they didn't even ask me. They just and
Brett Beatty got a car from the Mets for giving up his number 22 to Juan
I didn't even
Soto.
have a chance to negotiate a deal.
Oh man, this is terrible.
He just
wait a minute.
He was like, "Hey, I got 80. I got 82." And Hoss was like, "Mace, what number you want?" And
This
85
is
was there because Rona had left. Rona had just left. Mike Rohn, he had just left. He had 85, so I took 85. I wanted 80 when I came in. Rona had 80. Mike Rohn, he had 80. So then I picked 82. Rohn was still there when Yancey came in. So then I took 85. Because that was Derek Russell's number my first year. So I'm like, right. I'll take 85.
Okay, we need to find Yancey Thigpen.
One more thing. Breaking news from Adam Schefter. The Titans are releasing Harold Landry.
Wow. Well, I asked, and here we go.
So,
maybe Adam was listening to the show.
According to Adam Schefter, this was from 12 seconds ago. It just happened. The Titans are releasing Harold Landry.
So they
but what did I tell you? I said
no trade partners.
Yeah.
And can't have him at that number.
They're telling you, listen, they're telling you to go out and find a trade. When the team tells you to go out and find a trade, they really don't want you on their roster anymore. In the sense that I thought they were going to try to at least try to rework the deal and allow him to pay for half and then let him make his decision based upon that. But they just probably knew that he ain't taking a pay cut. He's not taking a pay cut, and there's not a market out there for him in regards to trades.
So again, according to Adam Schefter, the Titans are releasing
that's big
Harold Landry.
So now what do you do? I mean, I get it. He was not worth it. I was saying this last year. His contract is fat for what he gives you. He's a solid player in a 17-game season. He's a 9 or 10 sack guy. By the way, South Carolina is retaking control.
74-63, South Carolina.
Vanderbilt missed a tight shot that rimmed out. So they've maybe hit the wall here. But Harold Landry is a good football player, right? He's just overpaid. Yes. So I understand the financial move, but I'm guessing they probably went to him kind of like Rand Carthon did to Kevin Byard, which he got lambasted for all summer, but it was the right move.
Yeah.
We want you, but we need you to play at a certain number. And they couldn't come to terms. And so Harold Landry, he's probably going to end up on the Ravens.
So I want to know if this is going to be a big deal with Stillman because he tore Rand Carthon a new one for even suggesting that he take a pay
Right.
cut.
And Byard was way overpaid
And
for
Byard was
the
way
stage of his career.
But I'm
Yeah.
sure Borgonzi or Brinker went to him and say, well, they had to, because they said, go out and look for a trade.
Right. And what my point all summer, 2 summers ago when this happened was because Byard was such an important guy, I said most players in that situation get cut.
Exactly.
They didn't cut him. And maybe they should have, but they at least were able to get a trade and get something for him. So that ended up working well
for them,
for the Titans.
So,
but they can't get anything for Landry here.
So Harold Landry has been cut by the Tennessee Titans, according to Adam Schefter. Now I have to find this tweet from John Glennon, who has the financials. John Glennon, according to Over the Cap, the Titans will gain $10.95 million of cap space at a cost of $13.1 million dead cap.
Yeah. Spot Rack had that almost to a T. That's been out there. Spot Rack does a pretty good job. There's a lot of stuff in salary caps, maneuvering the salary cap, as we know in football, but they usually do a pretty good job of drawing the line of when a long-term contract becomes get-outable.
And it was
for lack of a better, it was get-outable. This was the time to get out of it if he couldn't rework it.
So Harold Landry, the longest tenured player on the Titans roster, no longer a member of the Tennessee Titans. All right, back to Ask D-Mace. Let's see if I can find these questions because they're coming in hot and fast. One person, okay, Billy, I found it. Billy from Indiana wants to know, Derek, point blank, who will be the Titans quarterback in 2025?
Oh man, that's a hard one. But I am going to say, and don't hold me to this one, but I think Cam Ward will end up being a starting quarterback.
Okay.
Don't hold me to it, but I think after it's all said and done, they are not going to pass up on Cam Ward. I think they're going to like him. I think there's going to be a consensus throughout the building that Cam is the guy.
One texter wants to know, Derek, how long does it take for players to know that they've got that dude at quarterback, like with Steve McNair? How long to know a quarterback is not that dude?
Man, at least I think we early on knew it was just something about Matt that, whether it be his toughness, his ability to get, everybody to play at a certain level. Again, he wasn't a rah-rah guy. He led by example out there on the football field. And you got to understand, he came in, I think, 2 years before I did. So I'm sure they saw something in him, that they knew. But, once I got here, there was just, you felt as if Steve's on the field, we got a chance to win. And I don't think, at least not in my career, I felt like that every time with the quarterback. Like, no matter what, like, we gonna win today because of that guy. Now, there may be quarterbacks that I thought, okay, we can win, but then on this day, it's like, man, he doesn't look like he got it today. We got to lift him up. No, Steve, every time he stepped out there, was like, okay, we got to win. Whether we won or not, we can win because he's our quarterback.
Let's see. What else do we have here? Mike in Clarksville wants to know quickly. We are more than an offseason away, the Titans are, from being competitive. What do you say if we run it back with Will Levis and his low cap hit, stay away from all the quarterbacks this offseason, and utilize all the assets we have in this year's draft by trading the number 1 pick away and what's in free agency to bring in players to fill in as many holes as possible? So I guess let's boil it down to this. How would you feel about, in this exploratory year, as Willie likes to call it,
Lewis and Clark on the Oregon Trail?
There we go.
Were Lewis and Clark on the Oregon Trail?
I don't know. I don't think so. They were the gateway to the West, though.
Right.
Lewis and Clark.
I told you that, when I would play Oregon Trail, I would have a bad time.
You were the one that brought in the Oregon Trail. I just brought in Lewis and Clark.
I know, but
they went west in general. Oregon is west of where they started, but I didn't know if there was a connection.
All I know is that my oxen would regularly drown in the river, and my family would die of dysentery from eating or drinking contaminated water. It was tough times back then.
Yes.
But quickly, Could you see a world where
Mhm.
the Titans can justify Will Levis starting a quarterback next season?
Listen, I said this before, and I'm gonna repeat it again. Now, whether they do it or not, it's just that's up to them. I don't think you can. I don't think you can afford to run it back again with Will Levis as your starting quarterback. Now, if he ultimately wins the starting quarterback and show that he's developing, okay, that's a different story. But you can't come into the season saying he's our quarterback. There's no competition for him. We're not going to even draft a guy. He's our quarterback. We're going to run it back like that and surround him. You can't do that to the fan base because the minute, if you do not start off on a good note next season, nobody's coming to the game. She will feel it in her pockets because when she comes to home games, and I mean Amy Adams, the owner, when she start coming to home games, she's gonna see no one there. If you run it back with Will Levis and y'all start off 0-3, 0-4, you can't do that. Can't do that to your organization. So I think it would be hard for them to run it back with Will Levis under the circumstances they find themselves. But here's the interesting thing. They hired Mike McCoy a few days ago, and he's a quarterbacks coach. So why are they bringing another quote quarterbacks coach on this roster? Don't you have two of them already in the head coach and the offensive coordinator slash quarterbacks coach? Don't you already have 2 or 3 guys on the roster? But you bring in another guy. That may be telling me something. I'm not going to say definitively, but that may be telling me something.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because I actually wanted to talk about that coming up next. 615-737-1025. We'll also keep tabs on the NHL trade deadline. We are approaching the 1 hour mark. The NHL trade deadline is at 2 o'clock Central. Barry Trotz will join Jared Stillman at 3 o'clock. The Predators have not made a trade today, but we'll see if that changes within the next hour. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025, 1063, The Game. D. Mace, Finn, Ginendonic, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. The NHL trade deadline is 57 minutes away.
It's
And
time to drink from the fire hose, everybody.
And it's a big trade, according to Fluto Shinzawa, who reports on the Boston Bruins for The Athletic. Charlie Coyle has been traded to the Colorado Avalanche. Pierre LeBrun chimes in and says Casey Middlestat is going the other way as part of this deal. So Charlie Coyle from Boston to Colorado, Casey Middlestat from Colorado to Boston. Willie, Casey Middlestat, another player we've talked a little bit about.
What was my question of the day? The riddle of the centers. And that has been a big, big topic all day long. And there's 1 hour left. And that's where Barry Trotz, I think, is at the center of.
No pun intended.
Nice. Pun always. I didn't even know I did that. I should have taken credit for that. But I didn't.
Too late.
But this is where I think the big question is internally is look at all these centers flying around here. I mean, it is really the fire hose is going, and it's real time. And you've got 1 hour to make these decisions. We have seen big returns for sellers, and it's clear the Bruins looked at it. They're only a couple points out of a playoff spot. They threw up the white flag with their injury situation. They just got beat by the Predators. And they've moved on from some guys. They are selling guys off.
There's also been some rumor and innuendo, I should say, about Brad Marchand. Whether Brad Marchand, he's injured, but people wonder if he could be on the move. So we will keep an eye on it. The Predators haven't made a trade today. There is still 55 minutes for Barry Trotz to make a trade. The only Predators adjacent trade that was made today was Luke Schenn, who the Predators traded with Tommy Novak to the Pittsburgh Penguins for Michael Bunting and a 4th-round pick. The Penguins flipped him to the Winnipeg Jets for a 2nd-round pick and a 4th-round pick with no salary retention. And there are a lot of angry Predators fans on our text line.
I don't think these are big deals, but it is definitely I think if you'd told me before the trade started flowing that you'd get a second for Nyquist and you would get Schenn's contract off the books, Novak's deal off the books, I think I would have said, all right, I can see it. I'm not thrilled with Michael Bunting, but I think what's happened since then is the seller's market, the prices have gone way up, and teams are really willing to jump in. Contending teams are willing to jump in with big assets, bigger than what Barry Trotz got. And I think it's obvious. You could see you get basically a 4th for Schenn. Winnipeg gets a 2nd and a 4th for Schenn. But we'll see. We'll see what he's got up his sleeve in this last hour.
We'll keep an eye on it. Again, Barry Trotz will join Jared Stillman at 3:00. Barry Trotz is not expected to address reporters until 4:00. So the first place you can hear Barry Trotz's reaction to the trade deadline is right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Unfortunately, Vanderbilt, the women, despite a furious rally, they fall 84-63 to South Carolina in the quarterfinal. So if my math is right, it was 68-63, which means South Carolina scored the final 16 points of the game.
That would be hitting the proverbial wall.
That's called the kill shot. So Vanderbilt, the women, eliminated from the SEC tournament, but we should see them in the NCAA tournament. So we'll see what seed the Vanderbilt women draw in the NCAA tournament.
I think they could be the 8-9 type of
the dreaded 8-9.
The dreaded 8-9 is what we're looking at here. But that is a big step forward for the program. Remember, they went through a dip. They made it into the last 4 in last year, won the first game, lost the second. Another good season this year with Michaela Blakes, and now the key is keeping her and fortifying the roster around her. They're moving in the right direction.
Also, the breaking news in the NFL within the past 15, 20 minutes, the Titans are releasing Harold Landry. There was the report that his representation had been granted permission to seek a trade. Clearly, that didn't happen because the Titans are releasing Harold Landry. But Derek, you mentioned something near the end of Ask D. Mays. The Titans made a hiring that probably didn't make a lot of headlines. They hired Mike McCoy, a former Chargers coach, longtime NFL offensive assistant. He is their senior offensive assistant. That is the title that Mike McCoy will have with the Tennessee Titans. He was the Chargers coach from 2013 to 2016. He was the Denver Broncos offensive coordinator from 2009 through 2012 and in 2017. And he was the Cardinals offensive coordinator in 2018. He spent the past 3 seasons in Jacksonville. And when you saw this news, I believe it was yesterday, that the Titans had hired Mike McCoy, an experienced voice on the coaching staff, it got your brain working a little bit. I want you to expand on this theory.
Yeah, because to me, it sort of leads me down the path of, what I think they may be looking to do with the number 1 pick. Because McCoy comes in just from an offensive standpoint. He was with the Chargers from 13 to 16. When he was with the Chargers, then the San Diego Chargers, his offense ranked 9th in the league with total offense. They were second and third down at 44.6%. Titans were horrible, I believe, in third down this year. They were not a good third down team. In addition, McCoy's group had a top 10 passing attack each season he was there. San Diego qualified for the postseason in his first season. Phillip Rivers had a resurgence year. He was comeback player of the year, threw over 4,000 yards, 32 touchdowns. So he has experience with getting quarterbacks back to playing at a high level. Hence, Phillip Rivers coming. I think Phillip Rivers had a knee injury the prior season, something like that. But his offenses were highly efficient. So you bring him in amongst the other offensive guys that you have had a history. And he had a history with Brian Callahan as well, I think, in Denver. He had a history with Brian Callahan. So they both are thinking the same way. They both have spent time developing quarterbacks. Hence, he was the quarterbacks coach the last 3 seasons with Jacksonville. Now, say what you want to say about Trevor Lawrence. I think injury has done him far worse than anything else. During his short career, he's been injured a lot of times or hurt more times than not. But you saw a little bit of the development in Trevor Lawrence. I think they are getting him more voices in the room, more minds in the room when they start really honing down on who do we want to quarterback our team from now until the foreseeable future. You bring in another offensive mind who has been successful at developing quarterbacks or helping quarterbacks get back to the status they were in previous years. He's been able to do that. He comes with resume as hot. He has a good resume. He's the head coach. His offenses were great. So you bring another mind in. Why? Because I think everything is zeroing in on the quarterback. I talked yesterday. There has to be a consensus, and I know, Willie, you don't like the word, but there has to be everybody needs to be on the same plane. Everybody has to be sold on that individual, especially if they're getting a quarterback. Everybody in the building needs to be sold on that guy, pretty much. Because when you draft him, you're drafting him to change the fortune of your franchise immediately. So why not bring more minds into the building? Why not bring guys that have experience of taking a quarterback that didn't play as well the previous year? And I know a lot of it was dealing with injuries, but the very next season, he ended up winning comeback player of the year, and his numbers were great in regards to comparing him to other quarterbacks that year. So why not bring another mind in? Because we want to make sure when we draft whoever we draft at quarterback or whoever we go out and get in free agency at quarterback, we know we've done our due diligence.
One thing we haven't talked about this week, a couple of pass rushers could be available. One is definitely available, Joey Bosa. Joey Bosa was released by the Los Angeles Chargers after a 9-year run with the franchise. The move saves them a ton of cap space. He was the number 3 pick in the 2016 draft. For a team that struggling, how many pass rushers does this team have now? The Titans, now that they've released Harold Landry. How many pass rushers do they have now?
I think the question will be, what's the market for Bosa
Right.
with his number one? Like, if you have him on his best day, he's still a force. The problem is
he's dealt
how
with
many
injuries.
Willie,
how many Sundays can you count on
his
him?
best days are far behind.
Yeah.
They are so far behind him. I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. This guy,
Not even at a bargain deal?
Not even at a bargain deal.
Really?
No, I wouldn't touch him. He's been in the NFL 9 seasons. He's only played 3 complete seasons. 3. And in those 9 seasons, he's the highest sack total he's had is 12.5. We talked about Joey Bosa as if he was like the next coming at the defensive end spot. I think the hype of the name never matched truly the production. And a lot of it was because this guy could never stay on the field. He's getting older now. I don't want you. I would have kept Harold Landry. Honestly, I would have kept Harold Landry. Why? Harold Landry, I know I can depend on Harold Landry being out there on the field. I don't know whether Joey Bosa is going to be out there on the field or not. I wouldn't touch him. That's just me.
He has played 28 games over the past 3 seasons.
I'm not. He wouldn't be a guy. If you do go out and give him, there will be no guarantees whatsoever. And he's not going to come with that. He's going to want some guarantees. So, I mean, last 4 years, like you said, last year, 5 sacks. Year before that, 6.5. Year before that, 2.5. Year before that, 10.5. His best season was his second season. And after that, because of injury and everything, he just fell off the map. That's why San Diego, well, LA has chosen to part ways with him.
What about a 1-year deal with incentives?
It doesn't make sense for the Titans right now where they are. If they were a contending team, to me, that's a Buffalo Von Miller kind of move. A team that feels like they're right there,
Yeah.
that one extra guy, and the player sees an opportunity to go to a good team where he could be a complimentary piece to a winner. To me, that's ideal for Bosa. It's not a fit.
You bring
but
Bosa
that's
in
the
here.
type of deal I think I would be willing to sign him to. But it's just for the Titans. What does he really? Does he move the needle at this point?
No, I don't think.
Unless you're going to sign him and then hope he has the first good 6 or 7 games and then trade him and get another pick.
You can do that. Yeah.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
How about the Bengals allowing Trey Hendrickson to seek a trade?
Now, depending
Now, that's an
on
interesting guy.
what they're going to be asking for, if I'm the Titans, I'm kicking the tires.
He has 35 sacks over the past 2 seasons, 4.5 more than the next closest player, TJ Watt, with 30.5.
Wow.
That's the
And
guy.
he's seeking
Again,
a trade?
I think because I don't think
They can't pay him?
Cincinnati, they're not going to pay him.
2 years ago,
money
he
he
signed a 1-year extension to the original 4-year, $60 million deal he signed with the Bengals in 2021. In 2025, he is set to earn $15.8 million in base salary, along with a $200,000 roster bonus, and represent a cap hit of $18.7 million.
Now, he's older than I thought. He's 30. I thought he was a little younger than that.
Oh, he got a
But
good
man,
4 or
he's
5
been
more years.
consistently a force.
This guy got a good 4 more years. He does. And he's not, he hasn't missed as nearly as many games as Joey Bosa.
No, he's been consistent.
He's been consistent pretty much his whole career.
The Bengals are a strange franchise, man. They've got a lot of talent, but it seems like Joe Burrow is displeased with what's going on there.
See, the problem with them is they didn't win the title under Joe Burrow's old contract. They got close.
Yep.
They got close. They got to the Super Bowl, but they didn't win it. And then you got to pay Chase. You got to pay Hendrickson.
T.
You had to
Higgins.
pay him. Then all of a sudden, here's T. Higgins, all this young talent with this quarterback. Because you got to understand, he and T. Higgins came in together. Joe Burrow and T. Higgins. So you accumulated all this talent, but couldn't win. And now the biggest ticket on your team is up for a payday, and that's Jamar Chase.
And everybody around the league has said the same thing. Historically, with the Bengals, they are not a cash flow team. They are a family-owned team, which is similar to the Titans in a smaller market. And everybody looked at Mike Brown's history and said, he's going to have some trouble keeping all these guys. He is not, let me get you a big wad of cash so I can use the loopholes in the salary cap. They don't do it like that.
And that's
So
what happened to
and
them.
they've exactly run into some issues. And here's one.
They did that years ago when they had Carson Palmer as a young quarterback, and they had
Absolutely.
Chad Johnson and Husman Zada and all
Remember
those
when Carson
guys.
Palmer
Yeah.
retired?
Exactly. So
He quote
but
retired.
you wasn't able to win you wasn't able to win the championship when all those guys were young, and then those contracts start to come due, and you had to basically sacrifice your defense in order to try to get some of these guys, and you never sniffed another opportunity at making the Super Bowl again.
Now, I don't pretend to know how to decipher emojis. I mean,
Mhm.
I use emojis,
Mhm.
but Abdul Carter tweeted at 1:00 a smiley face emoji and the number 1 emoji, perhaps in reaction to the Harold Landry news.
If he followed here, I wouldn't assume because they got rid of Harold Landry that they're taking the defensive end number 1. It's not, again, I think Harold Landry is a solid player, but it's not like it's Myles Garrett. And they say, you know what, we're going to trade away Myles Garrett. And now if I'm trading away Myles Garrett, I got the number 1 pick. Then if I'm Abdul Carter, I'm like, oh, I may be that guy now. But Harold Landry, I think he's a good player, but that's not going to make me think, oh, I'm going to be the number 1 pick now.
My vision was you find a way to keep Landry and you would
Yeah.
put Carter on the other side
Yeah,
and help shoulder the load with
Mhm.
your two big boys in the middle,
exactly.
taking up space and making stuff happen. You'd have a really good front four, but that's not happening.
615-737-1025. We'll keep tabs on the NHL trade deadline. The Predators still no moves today. There are 40 minutes left in the NHL trade deadline, although old friend Craig Smith is on the move
Yes,
again.
I just saw that.
Craig Smith,
Former host of the Predator Player Show. He's one of the alums of that. So.
yes, Craig Smith traded from Chicago to Detroit. Craig Smith has bounced around quite a bit since he left the Predators.
He really has. He's gone to
He's
Boston,
been in Boston, Washington,
Detroit.
Dallas,
I mean, now Detroit, Dallas,
Chicago.
Yeah. He's
Been all
making
over the
rounds.
place.
But now he goes to a team that's in a fight for their playoff lives.
615-737-1025. The final weekend of the college basketball regular season. A lot still up for grabs. We'll get into that next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025, 1063, The Game. D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you, keeping tabs on the NHL trade deadline. The Predators, we're still waiting for their first trade of the day. There are 34 minutes left in the trade deadline. A reminder once again that Barry Trotz will join Jared Stillman at 3 o'clock. The first comments from Barry Trotz post-trade deadline will be right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. We will continue to bring you updates over the remainder of the show. Again, the Predators have been quiet, although another former Predators player is on the move, Cody Glass, being traded from the Penguins to the Devils. Okay, final weekend.
Middle of the center.
Yep. Final weekend of the college basketball regular season. A lot left to be decided. Some intriguing matchups in the SEC. Remember, the SEC tournament will be here next week at Bridgestone Arena. We will be on location later next week in conjunction with the SEC tournament. We will tell you where we will be next week. It's a surprise. But some intriguing matchups around the SEC. The biggest, of course, Alabama at Auburn. Alabama is stumbling right now. Now, they've been losing to good teams, but they're scuffling a little bit. They have an opportunity to get things right against their biggest rival in Auburn tomorrow afternoon. Vanderbilt has an intriguing game on the road at Georgia.
Tough game.
That is a big game, a tough game, a big game for Georgia, as Georgia is trying to remain on the right side of the bubble. So
Georgia's won 3 in a row after losing the last 4. And Georgia's another, tough athletic team. And they really need to win. I think that this would hurt them if they lose. It would be gravy, I think, for Vanderbilt, who I think is in no matter what. So let's see if Vanderbilt is more rested and has that eye of the tiger back, neither of which they had in their loss to Arkansas. And Arkansas is a tough matchup for them. Arkansas had the desperation that they needed to play with. Vanderbilt was playing their 3rd game in 7 days. They went Thursday, Saturday, Tuesday. That's a tough – they won the first 2. But the emotions, coming back on short
Those
rest.
were huge games.
That was tough. And so I don't want to give them a full pass, but if people are wondering, why did they just not bring much to the table? That had something to do with it. Now they're a little more rested. Let's see if they bounce back with a good road performance at Georgia. But this is going to be a good game.
Some other intriguing matchups. Number 19, Kentucky at number 15, Missouri. Missouri, a 4.5-point favorite in that game.
Missouri's lost a couple here.
Mississippi State, number 25, Mississippi State at Arkansas.
Arkansas need this one.
Mississippi State is sagged a little bit here.
Yes.
Safely in, but they're
But Arkansas needs this one too.
Arkansas.
Yeah,
they
need
have
it.
to have it.
They need some wins. Build up some more
Hey, what's
wins.
who's Oklahoma guy? I forgot. Did you say?
Oklahoma and Texas. Oklahoma
So
and Texas.
there's 2 teams that are like
Texas
both
is
have
pretty
to win.
much I
both have
think
to win.
Lombardi right
in
now.
Austin.
They're both on
Oklahoma
the
at
outside
Texas.
looking
Yeah,
in
both
by
of them are on the
most
outside.
teams.
But Oklahoma just beat Ole Miss. Right?
Nope, they beat Missouri.
Missouri.
Oklahoma and Texas as far as Lombard.
Lenardi.
Joe Lenardi.
Lenardi. I was about to say Lombardi. Lenardi.
That's
He
all right.
has Oklahoma and Texas first 4 out. So
Big game.
yeah. Ooh, man. I'm sure.
Texas just beat Mississippi State on the road.
Mm-hmm.
And as we mentioned, Oklahoma just beat Missouri. So both still have life. Both still have hopes. Both really need this game.
Yeah. This is why the SEC is so tough this year, boy. Whew. And this is why they will get in the most teams, I believe.
Locally, Lipscomb is in the ASUN championship game on Sunday against North Alabama with an automatic bid on the line.
Mhm.
And they get to play at home because they earned the number 1 seed. And it's a good thing because they were behind. They had to come from behind to win an overtime in the semifinal. I got a chance to see Lipscomb play a couple weeks ago. It's the first time I'd really watched them. Really good team. And so that would be great for them. I don't think they've made the tournament, the NCAA tournament, since Casey Alexander left to go to Belmont. And that's been, 5, 6, 7 years now.
It's been that long.
So 1 win away. That place is going to be rocking at
I'm
Allen
sure it
Arena
is.
on Sunday. So good luck to those guys. They're fun to watch. They play a good brand. It's good, solid basketball. It's fun to watch. They space the court. They've got shooters. They have some good bigs that can go high, low, kick it out. So let's hope they bring their best on Sunday. You hate to have a great season, earn the home court for the championship game, and then not play well.
Ooh, because you only get that one bid.
Yep.
Yeah. And in that league, the number 1 seed earns the home court advantage, which I think is, for a smaller league, is the right way to go, rather than put it on a neutral site. You want your best teams to have an advantage in those conference tournaments.
That's how it was in my beloved Patriot League.
Yes.
When I was in college.
It also makes for a great atmosphere for the final, like a
Yes.
jam-packed gym.
Yes.
Instead of a neutral court where it's, maybe 75% full by the time all the teams are eliminated except for the last 2.
Speaking of Belmont, they are in the MVC tournament quarterfinal today against Illinois State. That game tips off at 2:30.
Tough league, right? Belmont used to be in the same league as Lipscomb for a while. Then they went to the OVC. They had to deal with Murray every year, but they were always top 2 or 3. Now they're in a league where there's almost always 4 or 5 really good teams. They've not made it to the tournament since they've gone to the Missouri Valley, and this will be another tough one. This is the 4 versus 5. We mentioned Belmont is one of 3, maybe 4. I don't know if Kansas has won a game that has won 20 games in a row, or 20, not in a row, 20 games in a season for 15 years in a row.
Ooh.
That is rare consistency, but it's all about the bids, right? So let's hope they can play a tough tournament. They're 3 wins away, but they'll have to beat 3 good teams.
So let's look at the SEC again. So final weekend of the regular season. You've got Kentucky at Missouri. You've got Mississippi State at Arkansas, Vanderbilt at Georgia, South Carolina at Tennessee. Tennessee coming off a loss to Ole Miss the other day. Alabama at Auburn. That is the main event. Ole Miss at Florida. Texas A&M at LSU. A lot of intriguing games. Which team in the SEC needs its best performance heading on Saturday, heading into the SEC tournament next week?
Ooh. I just think it's the Oklahoma-Texas game, to me, is the most urgent, because the loser of that game, I think, will be out of the first 4 out discussion, is my guess. Is how I think it will work, and that will put more pressure on them to have to make a deep run in the SEC tournament to get in. So I would say the loser of that game is in deep you-know-what.
I think Tennessee, they're playing South Carolina.
They're going to wax
right, but you're hoping that they do if you are a Tennessee fan. You want the good feelings going into the SEC tournament, because when you lose a game, look, the SEC we know is tough, but when you lose a game to Ole Miss, who is not, is a good team, but I feel like it's starting to dredge up those bad memories of good Tennessee teams from the past that haven't been able to get it done.
Oh, that's going to become the theme. There are a lot of Tennessee fans that become basketball fans on March 15th.
Yeah.
And haven't watched the game all year. Like, hey, why can't they win the tournament? Why can't they get to the Final Four? They act like it's easy to do that.
I think for me, and this is only because, one, I'm trying my best, and my homerism is coming out. I'm trying my best to push for State to get that number 1 seed.
Oh, yeah. Big Ten champion,
yeah,
Michigan State. Here comes the green. All of a sudden, I see a green aura in the studio right now.
Why are y'all green right now?
Yes, but I think it's going to, one, I think Ole Miss, they're in, but I think them going far in the tournament, and SEC tournament, will bode well for them as far as seeding in the in March Madness. But I think it's Florida, because I think if Florida ends up losing an Ole Miss and then they exit out of the SEC tournament early, I do believe that may cause some of the committee members to think about Florida a little bit different.
Because of those 3 teams, Florida, Tennessee, and Alabama. Florida is in the driver's seat right now for the number 1, the 4th number 1 seed.
And it just the eye test, I think that's the best of those 3 teams. If I had to pick one, I would pick Florida as the best of those 3.
Yeah, but my homerism is coming out. So I think if Michigan State would have to do their part as well. They won the regular season Big Ten championship, but I think for them, if they want that number one seed, they have to win the Big Ten tournament. I think that would put them especially if Florida loses early in the SEC tournament, all while losing their final game against Ole Miss. They still may end up being a number one seed, but I think if Michigan State, which they end with Michigan, who they beat a week ago or 2 weeks ago, beat Michigan. They've secured the Big Ten championship during the regular season. If they can capture that tournament championship, I think now they got a legitimate, like true argument about being the number one seed.
One texter wants us to give a shout out to TSU. TSU is in the OVC championship semifinal.
Oh, okay.
Is that tonight?
Tonight against SIU Edwardsville, 9:30 on ESPNU.
I would be so pumped if they could get to the final.
Mm-hmm.
It's been good. It's been a good year for the local teams. Middle Tennessee's had a good year. TSU, two wins away.
I'm trying to see who they would play in the final if they win. That I can't find quickly.
So they had a good year in the league, 12-8. SIU Edwardsville. I'm taking a look to see how they did against them in the regular season.
Southeast, they would either play Southeast Missouri or Little Rock in the final if they win tonight.
And they have a win they won at Little Rock earlier in the season. SIU Edwardsville, they lost to them on the road by 12 back on February 15th. And it looks like that's the only time they played them. All right. Penny Collins, Whites Creek Cobras, Belmont Bruins, grew up, born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee, trying to lead TSU to the tournament. That would be awesome.
One texter says Derek is so green he could be in Wicked.
You damn right.
Proud of it.
Absolutely. But I mean, that's just that's just an attestament, I think, of both the SEC as a whole and the Big Ten. I do believe the SEC is a better conference this season, but I would love to see, whether it's a 1 seed or a 2 seed, I would love for Michigan State to get that 1 seed, considering, they've been trying to find their identity. They've been trying to get that identity back the last couple of seasons. They've made the tournament, but they just hadn't looked like the Spartan teams that I'm accustomed to seeing, and I'm sure a lot of other alumni are accustomed to seeing. Been a good team, but I think this year they have that something on their team. I like Richardson, that kid. His father played for them and had a long career in the NBA.
Is that Jason Richardson's kid? Wow, yeah, I'm old now.
This kid is he's smooth. He's a baller. And they've gotten back to playing that Michigan State defense. They got a few bigs. They can rebound, score. They got some outside shooters. They got some penetrators. So to me, if they can win the Big Ten title, and Florida falters against Ole Miss and then don't get far in the SEC tournament, I think that opens up a door potentially, or a window potentially, for Michigan State to get that number 1 seed.
615-737-1025. We will wrap up the show as we do every Friday by taking it to the bank. Willie Donick, a 1/4 point lighter, but we'll get to it next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. It's time to take it to the bank with F&M Bank on DVD. F&M Bank, customer community, banking made easy on purpose. 15 minutes until the NHL trade deadline. Barry Trotz will join Jared Stillman at 3. But before we get to that, David Janes, quickly, let's recap last
But
week.
before David does, because I feel like this is symbolic sometimes of your day, if you're having a bad day or something. One of the funniest moments in a basketball game, I just saw it happen in real time. This poor girl from Kentucky. And I feel like I've had this happen to me in my life before. I was a pretty good player back in the day, but you ever have that moment, or you watch that moment in a game, like you're in front of your own bench, you're open, they get it to you. Open 3. Everybody on the bench stands up. Air ball.
Or worse,
Now
if
that's
like
a
you try to
bummer.
go for a dunk and you wedgie it in.
Oh yeah, those are about like that would be a good vote on Instagram. Unlike me, when I lost 30-0 in my daughter's Instagram on Is Lemon Line Gatorade.
You had 3 votes.
Yellow.
One of them were just you.
One of them was me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I made it respectable. But what's more embarrassing? Air ball wide open 3 in front of your own bench, or wedgie dunk, or catching the front rim on a trying to ram it on the dunk. Just boom, you catch yourself. That's
both
bad.
of them are very
That's
embarrassing.
both
and
bad.
quickly, Willie, I'm not going to let you say that. You didn't make it respectable by 1 day.
No,
it was still 30-3.
It was really 30-0. I doctored it just to get something in my column.
He texted Aaron like, "Hey, vote for
Would you
this,
vote
please."
for me, please? I'd like to know who the other person was. There's like one other person. Oh,
Somebody that felt sorry
sad.
for you, Willie.
Maybe it was Hal Gill. I think Hal's with me on the green. I think.
Either way, minus 0.25 points.
Yes.
David, go ahead.
I'm bummed out.
All right. So, Adam, you said Auburn over 4.5 against Kentucky. That did happen. You said Bama plus 3. That did not happen.
Thanks, Meshack.
Mizzou and the points. I think that happened.
No, it didn't.
It
Missouri
didn't?
lost to
Oh
Vanderbilt.
yeah. Oh yeah. My bad.
Yeah, come on.
Listen,
now.
I have so
Okay.
much going on back here.
Yes.
And you said Spartans over Wisconsin. That actually did happen.
All right, so 2 out of 4.
You got 6 points for 143 points. So you have 2 points over D-Mace.
All right, I'll take it.
But D-Mace had UT over Bama, Vandy over Mizzou, UK over Auburn.
I lost that
That
one.
did not happen. And you also said you said someone would beat the combine.
He ran a what? 4-2.
You ran a. You said
9?
Matthew.
4-2-9.
You said Matthew. I think you said someone would break the all time.
Yeah, the
40
all-time.
record.
Yeah.
I said break or
4-2-2.
tie.
Yeah,
and
but
they
that did
did.
not happen.
Matthew
Did not
Golden ran a 4.29.
Yeah,
And you had 6 points for 147 points. So you still have the lead.
that's right.
Congratulations, D-Mace. And
That's right. Thank you.
I said Texas A&M over Florida. That was a bad one. I said Bama over Tennessee. I said Memphis Tigers over UAB, and I said Vandy over Mizzou. I got 2 for 2, so I had 6 whole points.
Were these? Did these have points involved in these, or did you guys just take people
Some of
straight up?
them.
Some of them did. Some of them were like
For the
points.
interest of time,
Yeah.
we are.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just want to note that I had point spreads in mind.
I
That's
have
you.
point-
I
feel
got
like
point
I'll get
spreads.
more-
You
I
did.
feel like I should get more.
Adam
points.
did. Adam did as well, and so did
Yeah, I did
D-Mace.
too.
We're
And
trying
all
to
of your
save
points?
time. We're trying to save
Yeah,
time.
and okay, so I had 120 points for 6 points. Willie, I'm not gonna say yours because you were late, but you had minus 2.2.5, but you got 9 points for 128 total points.
And there you go complaining. You was
I had a
complaining.
good week. I had a
All
good
right.
week. I won 3 out of 4, and it started on Friday. I had Purdue. I had some good picks.
You had
I good
Belmont,
picks.
you
I
had-
had
and-
Belmont over Murray State with the points.
And you had the Spartans with the points as well.
All
I
right.
had the Sparties. D-Mace should be happy for me. I took your
I
Sparties.
am. I'm happy that
Derek,
you took care of
business.
you're back in first, so make your selections.
All right.
Let's
When
roll
does
through these.
hold on. When does the tournament? Well, we don't know who's playing who, so it don't matter. Okay. I'm going strictly SEC here.
Okay.
I got Vandy. I don't know what the point line is.
I will
for
find
that
it for
one.
you if I can. Oh, you're gonna wait for me? Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
just wait. Yeah, because I don't know.
Georgia's-
Let me see.
Georgia's a decent favorite in that game, I think.
Let's see. I don't see a line on this game on ESPN Bet.
Okay, we'll figure out what the line is, but I'm taking Vandy and a point.
Okay.
In that one. UT in South Carolina. I predict UT will win.
15 and a half.
They will beat them by more than, that's the whole thing. They will beat them by more than 15 points. All of these are rolling together. Can I roll them all in together? Because if
That'll
one don't
count
happen-
as your points. I mean, that'll count like
one extra
one-
point. Okay. All right. Got you. I got you. So they beat him by more than 14 points, and Chaz will have over 20 points. So that's what, 3 or 4?
That's
3.
That's
All right.
3.
I
And
lost
then, yeah, you're right. And then the Ole Miss Florida game. I'm taking Ole Miss in a point.
I wonder why.
Georgia is a 3.5
Yes.
point favorite against on FanDuel. Georgia is a 3.5 point favorite against.
Okay.
Canada.
Oh, okay.
All right, I'm going to run through
mine.
mine quickly. Tonight, Purdue at Illinois. Illinois is a 4.5 point favorite. I will take the Boilermakers on the road. Kentucky at Missouri. Missouri is minus 3.5. I will take the Wildcats also on the road. Alabama at Auburn. Auburn is an 8.5 point favorite. I will take the Tigers and the points. And of course, the main event, Duke at North Carolina.
Mm,
I wonder where he's going.
Exactly.
Duke has been beating people by 30 points. Carolina is playing its best basketball of the season. It's at Chapel Hill. It's senior night. Carolina will cover against Duke. It will be a tight
But
game.
you're not saying they're going to win.
No, I'm not saying they're going to win.
I was about to say, you pulling a Chris?
Carolina will cover. Duke minus 11.5. Carolina will cover.
Yeah,
I'm surprised.
I thought you was about to pull a Chris here, man. Goodness.
I'm hedging my bet, so if Duke wins by 40, I'll be pleasantly surprised.
You'll have a good feeling. I'm going to take Tennessee State as a 2.5 point dog in the semifinal tonight against Edwardsville. By the way, SIU Edwardsville. We need to come up with a better name for the school.
Yeah,
Like,
SIU.
It's a little wordy.
It's too much.
Yeah.
It's too much. Come on, shorten it up. Get something peppy.
Yeah, I don't. That's how you.
I need more pep. I'm going to take Arkansas minus 1.5 against Mississippi State. I think they're going to get the hog. They're going to call the Hogs and they'll hold serve at home. So I will take Illinois minus 4.5 at home. I think they will hold serve and cover. And finally, I feel like I got to get in on the Alabama Auburn. Auburn by 8.5. Yeah, I'll take Auburn. I'll take Auburn minus the points, 8.5.
All right, sounds good. So, okay, for me, I did. Let me see if I can find it. All right, so I'm also going to be on the Auburn, Alabama thing, but I think the Auburn, Alabama, I'm going with the over 177.5. I said Bama will also win, so those are my 2 bets for that. I also said Mizzou over Kentucky, and PJ Haggerty will have over 20 points against South Florida. That'll be tonight.
All right. Well, the NHL trade deadline is 8 minutes away, and here is my annual reminder that if a trade is not announced by 2 o'clock, that doesn't mean a trade has not gone through. As long as the trade is registered with the league, it can be announced after 2 o'clock. So just keep that in mind. But as of 1:53 p.m., there have been no reports of a Predators trade 7 minutes before the trade deadline. Quickly, how would we feel if this deadline passes and Barry Trotz does not make a move on deadline day?
I would say he clearly passed up on a seller's market if that's what holds. But he would be, I think the message he would give with Jared, who will join at 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock.
He believes these guys are essential to being part of a bounce back to next year. And we can debate whether that's, the right move or not. I would say, though, that this is one of the biggest sellers markets that I can remember in terms of how teams are just pitching it. For example, Cody Glass went for a 3rd-round pick. Cody Glass has got 4 goals and 11 assists. Like he had very little trade value over the summer. In fact, Nashville had to attach a draft pick for Pittsburgh to take the contract. And Pittsburgh gets a 3rd, trading him to the Devils. So it's been a good day for the sellers, and we'll see if Barry Trotz makes his move here with just a few minutes left. We'll see.
The NHL trade deadline is 6 minutes away. If the Predators make a deal between now and the start of Stillman and Company, Jared will bring you all of the news. Again, Barry Trotz will join Jared at 3 o'clock. His first comments post NHL trade deadline, but that will do it for us this week. Have a wonderful weekend. Stillman and Company coming up next.
Be love on your people. Have a safe, and blessed weekend. Peace.
don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.